So what we're going to do is we're going to run through each of our panels and have them introduce themselves and then jump right into Q&A. If you have questions while we're walking through this, Becca's going to be moderating the chat, but we'll also open it up to ask those questions as well towards the end. So, or at any time, just give us a holler or yell out in the chat. So first up is Miranda. So Miranda, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and just introduce yourself to everyone?
If I could get my mouse to click on the unmute button, sure. Yeah, so my name is Miranda. I'm 25. I used to work as a legal assistant in a small personal injury law firm when I lived in Richmond, Virginia. Now I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's my first time living in a new state, so that was really exciting to do during a global pandemic. And then I had to, obviously could not move my legal assistant job to Philly, and it was hard to find a job at the time. So I decided it was time to make a big change. I attended a coding boot camp, and now my life is forever changed for the better. And I guess that's like kind of a short little intro to that part of my life. Otherwise, I like to do pretty much anything you would describe like a grandma doing. I like to crochet, I like to do puzzles, I like to read, I like to hang out with my dog, and I like to watch TV. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Love the grandmother stuff. I'm the same way, by the way. You're not alone. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here too, Miranda.
No problem.
Next, we have Hannah's up. Hannah, can you give your introduction?
Sure. So my name is Hannah. I am 25 also, and I'm new-ish to Philly. I moved last August, but I've had friends here who have gone to college here, so I've always come to Philly since college and have always loved the city. So I'm happy that I finally get to live here. I have a degree in electrical engineering, but after college, I went into sales, technical sales. So basically using my engineering degree to sell things and explain, technical concepts to non-technical people. Realized that I really missed coding. So that's what prompted me to, find a boot camp. And I completed that boot camp last December, and have been working at Newly, which is a sister company of Urban Outfitters, Free People, and Anthropology. So it's all under the same umbrella, URBN. And I'm loving every second of it. It's so fun. And yeah, like Miranda said, my life has been changed forever and for the better. And I, am not so technical now, but I really love to travel. So I've been kind of missing that. You can tell by all my postcards. Those are all the places I've been to. So love to travel, love to read. That's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Hannah. And I saw the postcards behind there, and I thought that they were travel postcards. I was going to ask you about them. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
It's cute. I like to write a little thing on the back of each postcard so I can remember what I did that day or something.
That's great. And not everyone's always getting postcards. I'm always collecting postcards wherever I go.
Yes, yeah. I don't send them to I send them to myself. But
Oh, the ideas keep coming. Thank you so much, Hannah. Kayla, are you out there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Can you,
Hi. Yes, thanks for having me. So yeah, my name is Kayla Riopel. I graduated from the Flatiron School's online web developer bootcamp in November of 2018. I'm currently working as a full stack developer for HP Inc.'s 3D software division as a contractor. And before I attended the web bootcamp, I had done a lot of different things. I got my degree in college in documentary studies and production, and began producing independent films when I graduated, and got to travel around the world. My partner is a dual citizen with Germany, so I moved abroad and did some great exploring. I worked as a baker and realized I really wanted another, something more stable for kind of this next phase in my life. And had loved research. That was one of my favorite parts about producing films and making documentaries. And that really fits so nicely with web development, where you're always learning new things, you're always looking things up online, and then you're creating something that people interact with. So I couldn't be happier. And I guess my connection with Philadelphia is that I was living in Philly at the time when I was going to my boot camp. And that was when I got my first job at a web development agency that took me out here to Portland, which is where I am today. So thank you so much for having me today. And yeah, I've been working as a professional developer now for almost 3 years. It's wild.
Awesome. There's a big story in there. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good to know you through this.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
And Caitlin, we saved the best for last, and I meant everyone's the best, by the way. But Caitlin, you're up.
Well, yeah, thank you. So my name's Caitlin. I recently just finished the program at Tech Elevator on April 16th. I've lived in Philly for going on 8 years now. I actually moved here to go to Temple when I started my first career in psychology and counseling. I got a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in mental health counseling, and I thought that was really what I wanted to do. Was to help people. And I did that for about 2 years. I was a therapist. And most recently, I was working as a drug and alcohol counselor, helping people navigate their addiction. And after doing that for a while, I just realized that it wasn't for me. This was like a really difficult realization because I had spent so much time like getting that degree, so much money, so many student loans. So I like had to figure out what I wanted to do next. So that led to like a year of kind of like self-exploration. And that's how I found software development. I was kind of just like trying to learn more about myself and how I think and like what careers I thought my personality would lend itself to. And over again, I kept finding software development and like the traits that seemed like software developers had, I felt like I really aligned with. So I ended up like doing some courses online. And then after like a year of trying to self-teach, I decided that I kind of wanted to move it faster and I wanted support and like more guidance. So that's when I started looking into boot camps and found Tech Elevator. And I just recently, like a week ago, accepted an offer at JP Chase. So I haven't started yet, but I'm really excited to get started and hopefully have the experience that everyone else has had, that their life has completely changed. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Caitlin. So it's so exciting to have all 4 of you women here today. And it sounds like, I guess what I hear quite a bit at women in our chapter, Women Who Code, and even across like other chapters, is we all don't just arrive sometimes here. We all have like this story where it's this incredible pivot from mental health counselor, right? Or to documentary films, or like I was just sitting there and I had this aha moment and realized, hey, I want to be a full stack developer, right? So it's just so incredible to hear your stories and inspirational. And I think it's going to connect to many people, both other women on this call today and our allies. So I think that what I'd like to start with first is kind of determined for those that don't know or are trying to figure that out, like get into, you know, where do I go to a boot camp or how do you choose a boot camp? Maybe we can start with you, Miranda, like what and why? Like, why did you choose Tech Elevator as your boot camp? And maybe we can go through each of you and you can kind of tell us why you chose the boot camp that you did.
Yeah, sure. So I had actually been researching like tech boot camps back when I was in Virginia, because shortly into my law career, I realized that it was not for me. So I had been really drawn to tech, and I noticed I was getting, you know how I guess our phones and computers are always listening to us. I suppose I talked about it one time, and suddenly I got all these advertisements for all these coding boot camps. A lot of them in Virginia, where I was, were offered through universities. And I was really looking into the one at University of Richmond, but something wasn't there for me, where I kind of felt like it was one of those like fast track to a different career path, but possibly it wouldn't actually do that for you, right? Like I was always scared of committing to another, university program that I would come out all by myself again with maybe like a certificate or a degree that I didn't know what to do with. And it would be hard for me to get a job just like it was currently. And And so I kind of put it to the wayside. I had known that I would be moving to Philly, so I figured I could make my career change then and just kind of put it off. And when I came up here, I actually tried to put it off again because I was thinking, oh, I really need to get a job right now because it's a pandemic. I don't have time or resources to go do something so drastic. So I did look for a job in legal for a couple of months actually, before I realized none of the job descriptions were really speaking to me. I was gonna walk myself into another place where I was working somewhere for 2 years just to make sure I didn't look like a job hopper on my resume. So I started looking up boot camps in Philly. And as I was researching, I was just kind of Googling around. I didn't really look into any ads or anything. And I think probably the thing that influenced me the most was Course Report, I believe. When I was looking on there, I found obviously all the ones that offered programs in Philly. And when I saw Tech Elevator, what stuck out the most to me was that I couldn't really find a bad review. And that made me really skeptical, actually. I made it my mission to go try to find a bad review for this place, and I honestly could not. I haven't looked in a while, but I bet you still couldn't really find like a totally negative review. It's such a great program, and what really stood out to me also is that they have a pathway program which runs concurrently with the coding program, where they dedicate an entire half of your journey to really focusing on building your resume, helping you, make sure you speak to your soft skills while you're also speaking to your technical skills. Make sure you're prepared for interviewing. And that really set it apart for me. So that was kind of how I did that. Use unbiased sources on the internet to look through your programs. There are so many out there, and there are so many that you can choose from, and you're going to find one that's right for you. You just really got to put in the work beforehand. Sorry, that was long.
Oh, no, that's great. Was it Course Report that you said that you used?
I think it was Course Report. And they also report to, I think it's CIRR. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but I liked the transparency of that as well, because I was actually between Tech Elevator and there was I think UPenn was offering a program as well, but they didn't disclose their outcomes. So
Yeah.
they lost me.
Thanks for sharing that. I noticed that Kayla she went to Flatiron, and I was interested in how did you choose Flatiron, Kayla?
Yeah, so I chose Flatiron. I did a lot of research using Course Report, and then also SwitchUp was another resource that was really helpful for me. And I think ultimately my decision for Flatiron was two things. One, I really wanted a program that I could do fully remote and kind of self-paced, because I was holding two different jobs at the time, and I wanted to make sure that my course would allow that part of my life to be accommodated. The other part of it was that they offered a free kind of introduction program for both Ruby and JavaScript. And when I went through that, the material, I just loved the way that the material was structured. It really clicked with the way I learned. Learning through videos is something that's a little more challenging for me than being able to read and interact with something. And that online self-paced material just really worked for me. I was also really interested in making sure that this investment in a boot camp was something that was going to have that assurance. A lot of boot camps have this assurance of like a money back guarantee if you don't get a job in such amount of time, and like trying to find that career support. So after calling and talking on the phone with a lot of different coding boot camps, I think there were 3. I saw someone was from Thinkful. That was one that I was interested in at the time. It's been a while, so I'm forgetting. There was there was the AVA, I think it's called AVA Development Institute in Seattle was something, and that's a full in-person program. So that was a little more of a stretch, but it's a completely free program. And so those, though they had similar like job placement things that helped me feel encouraged, just the way that I learned on the Flatiron School platform was what really helped me.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Caitlin, with you went to Tech Elevator as well, and what really, what motivated you or what drew you to Tech Elevator?
Yeah, sure. So I won't like reiterate stuff Miranda said because everything she said was like also my thoughts too and my experience. But some like additional stuff was my experience with Katie, who is the director, like when I was interviewing with her. It was like a good feeling, like a good intuition feeling, along with all the like logical and critical analyzing the program. And she also set me up with another student who had graduated who had a similar background as me, who was in behavioral health, and like kind of connected us so I could talk to him. And he was great. And we talked for like, I think like a few hours on the phone about his experience at Tech Elevator. And he was so positive about it. So like, again, that transparency piece and like getting to hear from an actual student who went through the program, and like how confident he was in it and encouraging that was. And then also like one of Tech Elevator's big things and big mission is to diversify tech. And so like early when I was looking into them, I found that they had this scholarship for anyone who's underrepresented in tech. So women, people of color, and then people who identify like as a non-binary gender, which like I thought was so cool. And I hadn't seen any other boot camps offering scholarships. And I thought it was awesome that I could apply, and also that they just support that. I was like, even if I don't get it, like I want to support them doing that. So that was another big reason why I thought they were really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for letting me know that. I didn't know they did that either. And that's always a big
Yeah, and it covers 85% of the tuition. It's like a really big deal. So it's really cool and relevant to everyone here. So
awesome. Hannah, so what was your like defining moment with that you chose Tech Elevator?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of what Miranda and Caitlin said too, but for me, like when I was choosing a boot camp, it was very much location based because I'm originally from Connecticut and I needed out of Connecticut. So, and I always wanted to come to Philly. So the fact that Tech Elevator was in Philly was a huge motivator for me. But also I loved the fact that, like Kayla said, how she kind of liked to do it on her own and like have her own set schedule. Like for me, I was the opposite. I knew that because I had bought so many Udemy courses. You know how like they always go on sale and like I buy them for when they're like $5. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this course. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Never did it. I never finished them. So I knew I needed an instructor, and I knew I needed like I needed like the structure of going back to school, but like I could not make it through another 2 years of I couldn't make it through another 2 years of school. So I knew I needed some sort of structure like that though. So Tech Elevator gave me that structure that I was looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always when I do the same thing still. As soon as some of those courses go on sale, I'm like, oh, I want to pick that up, right?
I still buy them. Like, and I know, well, maybe now that I'm like actually in the field, I'll probably maybe
slow down a little bit.
Maybe I was going to say, maybe I'll actually start learning them. We'll see. I'll keep you updated.
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to move since we left off with you. I'm actually going to pitch you the next question as well.
Sure. All right. I'm ready.
So, you graduate, right? Like you finish. How did you know when to start, or maybe it was even before then, how did you know when you were going to start applying for jobs? How did you know when you were going to, check out Newly? Like when did you start applying for jobs?
So Miranda briefly mentioned like the pathway program that Tech Elevator offers. So we actually start applying for jobs, I think like 2 weeks before graduation. And so I had heard about the job that I currently have now, because we actually had a hiring manager from URBN Urban come in and speak to us. And she said, oh, hey, this is available. Like, maybe you should apply to it. And we all applied for it, like everybody, obviously we all applied for it, everybody in our cohort. But I tried to, I guess, like go the extra mile. And I really reached out to the hiring manager, and I just like, it really expressed my interest with the company because Newly is very much about sustainability and fashion, and it's a clothing subscription. And it's just something that I was really passionate. I still am really passionate about it. So I reached out to her, and we kind of had like a conversation going after that. And I guess like one thing led to another, and here we are today.
That's awesome. So I would like to like kind of move over, Kayla, and just ask you, you've had a couple different you had an interesting journey, right? A bit. How did you decide
Yeah.
how did you decide which jobs to choose from once you know?
Yeah, so I think part of that interesting journey has helped me narrow down, and it's probably a process that you continue throughout your entire life about what are the things that I want in my career, like what fills my cup in terms of learning or contributing or something like that, and then also where are my strengths? What do I already feel like I'm an expert in, and then what do I want to learn in? So I kind of considered all of those. And because of my background with film production, I felt like I had this strong skill set in terms of working in like a little bit of like project management, looking at clients. And so I was really interested in agency work to start out with. I figured that that would be something that would help me leverage those skills of talking to people and tracking work while I could focus on my coding journey and improving those skills. And I got really fortunate in that worked out in my job at an agency. It was a great balance of those. But at some point, that shifted for me where, I felt like I didn't need that support anymore and wanted a more like full, deep development role. And that's where I'm at now. So I think that process of knowing what it is that you really wanted a job and what you really don't want at a job, like I was very concerned about moving into a large company and being kind of like a new person, fish out of water. I had never worked for a large company before, and that felt like it would be something too different. So I made that list based on companies that used the programming languages that I was familiar with and seemed to have that small culture, raise up their developers environment. And I saw that with Planet Argon on their blogs and in their interaction with the community. I mean, it was great. I gave a talk at a Women Who Code event in Portland 6 months after I started working at Planet Argon. They had something for junior developers, and so I got to present there. So it's great. I would really focus on something too that lifts up junior developers, because that's really great moving from a boot camp into the next phase of your career. Oh, thanks, Meg.
Sweet. So, Miranda, what was your experience like when went out to determine did you walk that same like tech elevator like 2 weeks before kind of, we have to apply for jobs, or how did you determine what jobs you were going to apply for?
Well, so I was also applying for jobs like 2 weeks before with Hannah.
Okay.
For me, it wasn't so. I personally felt that I did not really have enough experience in the workforce and in tech specifically that I knew exactly what I wanted out of like the work that I'd be doing. Right. So when I was looking for jobs, it wasn't really as important to me to be like, oh, I want to work with big data, or I want to design on the front end, or I want to work with APIs. I was really open to whatever. I am a believer in I don't really know what I'm gonna like until I do it, right? So I felt weird ruling a lot of stuff out. So for me, when I was looking for jobs to apply to and companies to apply with, it was really about the feeling I got for how they take care of their employees and like what the management structure is like, what the other people you're working with are going to be like, what the working environment is like. Because in the past, I've had a lot of positions where I didn't really feel valued as an employee, or I didn't feel that I was really doing a lot or making a big difference at the company I was working with. So, for example, like when I met, I ended up getting my job through the matchmaking day at Tech Elevator. And I interviewed with 4 different teams from JP Morgan Chase, and I didn't get a good feeling from any of them until the last one. So when I was going through the other interviews all on the same day, I was like, gosh, I really kind of thought they were going to be somebody I was really interested in. And then here I was interviewing with all these managers that I didn't really feel a connection with. I felt a little intimidated by. I was not really feeling like I was going to fit in. But then I met the manager at my last interview, and we clicked immediately. And, you know, we were laughing during the interview. It felt really friendly. It felt really cordial. It was exactly the kind of vibe I wanted for a team that I'd be working with. So I felt really positive about that, actually. And I think it made me do better in the interview, which I'm sure we'll get to later. But I really liked how they talked to me. I felt like we were all peers and that they didn't really feel that they were too above me. And later that night, the manager actually reached out to me on LinkedIn to tell me that I was going to be getting an offer soon. And he was so excited about it. And he was like LOLing and stuff. And I just never experienced like a job interview like that, or met with people who were in that position who talked like that with me or acted like that towards me. And that's what really drew me there. But in summary, I really gravitate towards jobs and companies that make me feel like a human being and make me feel like an important part of the team.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so important. And they say, you know, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, right? And I'll
Right.
follow, I think in my own history, I followed behind managers or stayed with jobs probably a little bit past like I needed to, just because I didn't want to leave A, the team, or leave B, the manager I worked for. And we did segue very well into interviewing. So I wanted to say thank you so much. So get your bat in your hand ready, Hannah, because here comes a question for you, all right? All right. And don't worry, Caitlin, you're up because you're fresh too on interviewing. So we'll definitely want to get with you. So keep this in the back. So let's talk about that interview process. Hannah, what was the interview process like for you? What would you tell everyone on this, you know, the call, what it was like and what you to expect?
So my interview process for Newly was, I would say, pretty similar probably to everybody's experience. So we had that first, you know, introductory phone call that was basically just going over your soft skills, just kind of getting to know. It's my current manager who I spoke to. So I like getting to know my current manager and he was getting to know me. And then the second, once I was brought back, once I, you know, passed that milestone, I was brought back for a second interview. And that was actually with my current manager and another manager on the same team. And that was like the technical part of the interview. So which also was the part I was terrified for. But it was actually not that bad. The biggest thing for me that I had to overcome for technical interviews was getting comfortable with saying, I don't know. Because in reality, not even my manager knows everything. He tells me every day how he doesn't know everything. And he also has to Google things all the time too. So just getting comfortable with saying, oh, I don't know, or I don't know enough to answer intelligently. That was something that I really practiced for. And I really practiced for the technical interviews for that because I knew it was going to come up. And I tried to, you know, say I don't know, but also express the fact that like I'm willing to learn and like I'm looking forward to like learning more about it. But yeah, so that was the, you know, and then after the technical, then it was really just those two parts for me.
Awesome. I don't know is a pretty powerful thing, right? It shows a little bit of humility. And
yeah, and it's like, it's very scary to say too, because here you are like talking to a potential manager saying, well, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I want to know eventually. Someday I'll know, you know?
Absolutely. So Caitlin, you know, this is pretty fresh for you, right? Like, let's talk about it. And one of the things I really want to drill into too is like, what besides like the technical and then what non-technical thing did you really would you tell everybody they needed to know too? Like, what would you pass on to others to empower them going into an interview?
Yeah, sure. So I will definitely echo what Hannah said. Saying I don't know is really important. The manager that I interviewed with for JP Morgan, she actually recommended me to a different team. But some of the feedback that she gave me was that I was very self-aware and communicated really well. And I think that's because I was honest and like said I didn't know sometimes, and then also expressed like that I wanted to get better at some things. And I realized that I wasn't like where I wanted to be with some things. So I think like, having confidence to say you don't know, but like, yeah, want to learn is really good. And I noticed that people really like soft skills, which I think like was a new idea to me, because I feel like I take them for granted because I come from a mental health field where like people generally have those or expect that from you, but in tech, that's not necessarily always there. So I feel like people really like my soft skills, like ability to communicate and make them feel comfortable and like disarm them and like make it feel like casual and smile and know that I'm listening to them. Like I use like a lot of reflections in my interview and like kind of like think out loud and show my thought process a lot, which I feel like are non-technical things that they really value and look for, because it shows like, how are you going to work on a team and how are you going to listen to your teammates or take feedback and things like that. So those were some of the things I noticed. Did I answer your question fully, or is there anything else?
Oh my gosh, yes, you did. There is no right or wrong here at all. But that was great. I kind of want to talk about like reflections. Can you like tell, I'm not sure if everyone knows what, the reflections and the self-awareness, what that looks like when it was happening.
Yeah, sure. Let me try to think of an example.
And if you're on the spot, Caitlin, you can like pass and come back to me while I think of a good one.
Yeah, I can think. So for example, when people are asking you like technical questions in interviews, like sometimes I got in some interviews like asking me critical thinking puzzles. And so sometimes they would say something and then I would kind of like repeat it back to them in a different way to make sure that I understood what they were saying. So like reflections is basically like kind of like saying what the person said in your own words, like in a different way to make sure that you understood what they said. And it kind of shows that you can work with people and like empathize with them and like, hey, I'm like hearing what you're saying. Am I getting that right? And like making these clarifications so you're not like working on assumptions. Yeah, it's like mirroring them and it makes people feel heard. So it like makes them feel good and like you listen to them.
Awesome. That's awesome. I would like to just take a minute too and just check in with Becca because I can't see if there's questions coming in, and just ask, have there been any other questions specifically around interviewing from the guests we have on the participants right now?
Yeah, so one of the questions was, how can you gain experience in other ways other than boot camps? Did any of you try to gain experience like working through open source or something like that before deciding on boot camp?
Yeah, and feel free to just hop it in.
Oh, go ahead, Kayla, you want to go?
I feel like we're going to say a similar thing because I related to what you were saying earlier about like trying to do like Code Academy courses and just like online courses. I never felt like confident to undertake a project, which I feel like I should have. I was just always like, I don't really like know where to start. So I kept trying to do courses. And then like Hannah, I felt like I like needed that structure and like needed that guidance to actually make it happen. So that was kind of like my only experience with trying to learn by myself.
Yeah, I had that same like fear of like starting my own project too. So I kind of hung around, or I did a lot on HackerRank, and they kind of have little exercises for you to do, which was nice. So I wasn't doing like a full scale project, but like I was still doing hands-on stuff. So that's kind of how I got some experience beforehand.
Awesome.
I would also add, this wasn't something that I tried to pursue instead of Bootcamp, but in addition to it, I participated in Hacktoberfest, which if you haven't looked at that before, I would definitely recommend looking into it. It's something that Dev2 lately has been sponsoring, and that's another great resource for people learning how to code. But the resources that were mentioned on there were really great for open source to just like provide some context or other type of conversations so that you could see how tickets were set up, you could see how the workflow would work and get. So I did a little bit of open source contributing. But the other thing that I'd say that was helpful was finding someone, maybe in your community, in your family, who needs a website or needs some kind of solution that's related to tech that you're interested in solving, and just ask them, hey, for a low level like experiment, can I try to solve this problem for you? That can provide some structure, it can provide someone to talk to, and then it also provides an end product for a portfolio that you could show.
Great.
So that's all I'd add.
To the end of that really quick, I didn't do this before I went to my boot camp, but I wish that I had thought of it. But during my boot camp, I discovered that if you learn by example, which I do a lot of my learning by example, YouTube, like for everything else, is fantastic. just think of something that you might want to build with code, like how to build a simple game with JavaScript or something, and YouTube that, and then just follow along when they do it. Super fun, and I built something that way. So I think that'd be a cool way to dip your toes.
Yeah, also like piggybacking off of that, I betcha, I actually don't know if this is true or not, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there to see if anybody contradicts me. GitHub has a lot of like people put their projects on GitHub. Also, if you don't have a GitHub, get a GitHub. And you can probably look through projects that you're interested in and not like steal their code, but like take ideas from their code and like use that as like, you know, a base for whatever project you want to pursue. And then you don't feel like you're starting from scratch, which can be kind of intimidating. So another idea.
Yeah, Hannah, that's been one of the single biggest like learning curve opportunities for me, is to find other code, you know, be it inside of the agency. I could look at other clients' code that we had, and then also on GitHub, like find other people who are using the tools that you're using and see how they structure it. Like learning how to read code is a huge benefit for picking up new technologies.
That's awesome. This is one of the reasons I love like networking, and I call this like the collective mind. The number of resources that we have spit out here has been incredible. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with these and your resources. Becca, was there any other questions that I may have missed in the participant list?
I think we're going to actually get to the other one shortly in the interview bit. So
Awesome. So I hope that I'm going to get to this. So let me go ahead and I'm going to pitch over to Kayla. Are you ready? Yeah, I have a feeling you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, let's do it.
So I do have a question around like, how did like employers, I mean, you had a degree, right? But how did they react to like going through a boot camp versus like going through a program? Like, did they see the program, the boot camp as the same, I don't know, the same merit?
Yeah, you know, that's so interesting about a huge difference about the culture between the first company that I worked for and the second company, like my current company. So the first company that I worked for was founded by someone who wasn't a high school graduate, who learned how to code on their own and loved boot camp grads. Like that's like a huge part of their culture. I think there were 2 people on our team who had studied at university. So that really didn't even come up. They were just more excited to see about where that diverse angle came from. At my current role, it's a little different because there is more of an expectation about having a college degree in order to have certain positions. So I feel like now I'm kind of building my chops a little more by showing them what it is that I can do, even without a college degree, volunteering for things that are challenging, you know, showing up and pointing out problems that are difficult and having conversations about them, using those soft skills that I feel confident in to demonstrate my value to the team. So I think that it really depends on the company culture where you're going into, and don't lose faith that, you know, you have the skills. Like as a bootcamp grad, as a self-taught person, you know what you're capable of doing, and it just may take some different strategies in order for you to match what that culture is expecting you to be able to do.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking as well is I'd like to just kind of think, if you could just each of you think of like, what was one of the technical questions that they asked during your interview? Like what kind of technical questions? Maybe I'll pitch over to you, Hannah, to start us off. Like what was some of the technical questions, or at least one that you remember specifically that they asked about?
I just know that every technical interview I went on, they always asked about, oh geez, now I can't even remember. It was, wait, what did they call, Miranda and Caitlin? What was Rich's thing?
No, I don't know what
easy
you're talking about.
pie. It was pie. The easiest pie, you know, wow, I really am just drawing a break. I probably couldn't even pass a technical interview right now.
Object-oriented
Even though I
programming?
do it every day. No, so it's easy as pie, which is like polymorphism, inheritance, and what's the last one?
Encapsulation.
There it is. Shout it out. Yeah, that one. I always got asked about those. Clearly, I need to do some review.
That
So
was awesome. That was so awesome. Caitlin, what do you remember? What was a technical question that you were asked?
I'm like, I have the worst memory for like specific things, so I'm trying to think. I feel like a lot of times I was like studying the concepts and like what they meant, and then like they would throw like practical questions at me, like if I did this, what would happen? So what I'm thinking about now, I think the interview was with a JP Morgan manager, asked me like if I do a system out print line in Java and I do it was like if I do 2 + 2 plus the string Java, what's going to print out? And then what if I did 2 plus Java plus 2 or something like that? It was like about concatenation and like kind of like applying that. So that was one thing. And I feel like that's a good thing to keep in mind, like maybe not expecting them to like literally ask you the textbook definition, but be ready to like actually apply some of the things you've learned. So I don't know if I just butchered that explanation, but
that was
you know what I mean?
that was great. And it's I guess Miranda may have, I don't see her on here right now. Are you still there? Like I only have like 6 pictures up.
Oh, sorry. I'm like waiting for you to say something else. I was like, yeah, I'm here.
No. I was wondering, like, what do you remember around like technical questions, or do they have any like algorithm questions, whiteboard coding questions that you had to be prepared for?
Thankfully, I never had to whiteboard. If I did, I would not have gotten that job. I can tell you that right now. I firmly believe that I got my job purely on soft skills, but they tell me that I answer the technical questions pretty good. So I guess I did an okay job. If I had to pick a technical question that I got asked in a lot of my interviews that had the ability to trip me up, it would be about like MVC pattern, model view controller. I have a lot of trouble with like remembering all the terms around communicating with APIs and setting up the back end for that. So that's a big question that specifically JP Morgan, but I think in almost all my technical interviews, I got asked something around that. So be able to explain that. Another thing I got asked about in almost every single interview was SQL. Knowing your SQL terms, how to do a select statement. They're going to ask you maybe about a lot of specific terms in SQL, know how to distinguish between the different types of joins. They asked me about some kind of, I can't even remember what it was now, some kind of join or like something in SQL. And I was like, I can honestly tell you, I've never heard that in my life. He wasn't shocked by that. He had just thrown something out there that was a little more expert just to see if I knew anything about it. And I sat there and I was like, I hope I'm not just totally blanking on that, but I swear I've never heard that in my life. And then he explained it to me, which was really nice. So
That's great. That's great. I think the honesty goes a long way, right? Like we want an employee that's gonna, when I think about people I've hired, if they were honest and I can really tell their authentic self, like I'll take them any day, right? To work alongside me, right? Last but not least, and is there's anything that the last thing, and please ignore my little rat terrier yelling in the background if you hear him, but what would be one thing that you would tell the group, like what to take away from interviewing? If you can give them like one piece of advice. And whoever wants to kick that one off, go ahead.
I can go again. Learn from your interviews. Don't just like I can't remember actually now what they told me about like taking notes during the interview. If I felt like I was going to learn a lot from the people who were interviewing me, I would ask in the beginning, hey, I'm going to take notes on the side. Is that okay? Like, I just want to make sure that, you know, whether or not I get this job with you, whether or not we move forward, I'm learning from this experience. We do matchmaking at Tech Elevator, and the first day I had 6 between 9 and 5. And every time I went to an interview, if there was a question I couldn't answer or a question I couldn't think of the way to answer or like a term I couldn't remember before my next interview, I wrote that down, went and researched, what's the answer to that? Or like, what term did I forget? How can I explain that better? And I noticed throughout the day that I was getting better and better at my interviews. So maybe, hopefully you won't have 5 interviews at once. But even if you don't, it's good to write those things down and learn from those, because I definitely got better by the end of the day. And my last interview was the job that I got. So I can't say for sure whether that was the reason, but I don't know. It's disappointing.
My gosh, I don't know. Did you drink energy drinks or just a lot of orange juice, like to
No,
make
I just cried.
Yeah. What about you, Caitlin? What would you say?
The thing I'm thinking of is always like asking questions, even throughout the interview, like not necessarily waiting for like the formal time at the end, but always asking questions and like seeming very engaged and interested about the company and what they're doing. And also asking questions like about the person who's interviewing you and like their experience at the company, because that can like tell you a lot, like getting someone's actual experience at a company and what they like and like how the culture is and like what they've gotten to learn. And then they get to talk about themselves. So they like love it. And then they have a better feeling about you. So yeah, definitely doing like research about the company, maybe a little bit of research about the person, but don't be creepy. And like asking questions and seeming engaged and excited.
Awesome. Really quick, Caitlin, I heard you say this and I just wanted to touch on that. Did each of you two, if you could answer, did you research the company before you interviewed with them as well? Like that's
I'm
important.
sorry, can you say that again? You were like breaking up.
Oh, did you research the company before you like interviewed with them, right? Like got your
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had like notes on, I also did like matchmaking and did a bunch of interviews in one day. I think I had like 4 one day. So I had full notes and like already worked out questions that like I had ideas of what to ask. And I had some notes about the person that I was interviewing with too, because I'm creepy. But yeah, doing that like prep work, it also like just helped me like feel more confident going into it. Cause like, I don't know, doing that preparation just helps like ease my anxiety because it makes me feel more in control. So if you have anxiety, I think that could help you.
I'll say that I'm right there with you every time too. I do the same thing. Hannah.
Yeah, so kind of to like what Caitlin said, I think I black out during every interview I've ever had. I just like absolutely remember. I don't know what I talked about. Like I don't know what I said. So the prep work for me was everything, because I sometimes would literally write out like if somebody, I had questions that I knew they were going to ask me or thought they would ask me, and I had sentences written out for responses, because if I hadn't prepped, my mouth would just run and say whatever. I don't even know what would have come out. So prep work was for everything for me. Even like the polymorphism, all that stuff. I had that all written down on like a little sticky note. And during my Zoom interviews, I just would like look at my little sticky note every time those technical questions came up, because I knew the answers to those questions. I just get nervous during interviews and apparently panels, so I can't remember what they are. But also a piece of advice too is the first thing I do is write down their name. So it's nice when we do Zoom interviews, because their names are usually right on their little Zoom box. So I'd write down their names so I could either get their email afterwards or find them on LinkedIn afterwards. So that's my one bit of advice for interviews. Definitely do that.
Kayla.
This is all amazing advice that, yeah, I think I have tried all of these strategies at some point in time, and they've been hugely beneficial. Trying to think of something to add. I guess a few points would be: one, make sure that you're taking care of yourself when you are preparing for your interviews and after your interviews, because your interviews are as much about what you think. So this like solving those problems in a technical interview as how like the other people are interacting with you, because they're not only looking at your technical skills, they're looking at your social skills and what it could be like to work with you as an employee. So feeling calm and grounded can go a really long way. And same thing with after the interview, you know, maybe planning to take a walk or doing something else, because the job search can be really grueling and take a long time. And making sure that you're in it and you're remaining connected to your priorities can be hugely important. I think that kind of part of my practice was after each interview, I'll go outside for a little bit because that's something that's really relaxing for me, you know, take a small walk. And then when I came back in, write down 5 things that I thought I did really well during that interview and 5 things that I wanted to work on for the next interview. And I think that that helped me stay focused and then also like move on and continue with the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you know, thanks, Kayla. I kind of want to double click it in here, and you know, this happens during job interviews, and I'm wondering if anyone's had that experience. And I hear you speaking to it. We don't just go to like one day. Like some of us haven't had that experience where it gets grueling, right? And we start to look at ourselves and say, what am I not bringing to this? Or why am I not getting this position? Or what's happening? And we often can get, at least sometimes I have in the past, like get desperate, right? Like, why am I not landing the job? Have you ever experienced that? Either of all 4 of you, like feel that? And what did you do to kind of move past that to keep positive? I'm looking at Joanne's message here. Look for something positive in every day, right? How did you move past that? Because this is life happening, and interviewing for jobs is hard, and you know, this is your economic security, right? And you're thinking about this, and how did you kind of move past, or not move past, but stay positive and focused during that? And I heard you speak to that in a sense, Kayla, but have you each experienced that, or has it always been just a win-win? And I think talking about those hard times is important too. Have you had that pick yourself up to keep moving forward kind of moments? There's a question in there. Do you hear the question, or did I just
I think I hear it. If y'all don't mind me starting first. I think I've had those moments in boot camp. I've had those moments in the interviewing process. I've had those moments in my first job. And, you know, they just keep coming up at different times where, you know, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. This can rise up, and that sense of doubt about maybe this isn't for me, or putting that blame on yourself. Maybe it's something about me. And what I think has helped me is, one, having a strong support network of friends and family, and then 2, having good mentors, either or colleagues, like fellow people who you're learning to code with, you know, teachers in your coding boot camps who you connect with to kind of commiserate with, and same thing goes at your company. And then I would also say, like, I am such a writer and a note taker. I write everything down. It's very weird for me. I'm like calling in on my phone right now to not have like a keyboard right here. But yeah, like reminding, I had some kind of notes about why I was doing this, why I wanted to make this transition, and going back to that goal and why it was important to me was great to encourage me to keep moving forward. Because like, who you are at the beginning of this journey and who you are once you get your first job or in the middle of your first job is going to be different. But chances are, if you're making this transition for something that's deeply connected to your values won't change. So as long as you remember what that goal is and it's connected to your values, that might put you back on track.
Anyone else?
I was just gonna say that was beautiful.
It filled up our heart buckets, didn't it? Like, that's landing that first job, or that's the kind of, that's just why we all like come together as a community. I thought so too. And Caitlin, I did.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely, Kayla. I saw you come off mute. Did you want to say anything?
I was also going to say that was really great what Kayla said, and I didn't have like a good answer to that because I kind of got lucky and like got hired right before graduating. So another like plug for Tech Elevator, like they really set those interviews up and really helped us like get hired in a good amount of time, but also having peers that you can talk about that with, because like they're going through the same thing as you. So I know during the process, like I kept kind of leaning on my peers, and like we were talking about how anxious we were and like how overwhelmed we were. And throughout the program, we were also just like getting support. So I feel like it's important to definitely like form a community, even if you don't do boot camp, even if you can find one person who's like trying to do a similar thing as you, and getting that support from them and also giving that support to them.
Yeah. Give and take, right? Sometimes it feels better to like give. Sometimes when I'm having a hard day, I just like to call somebody like, hey, how are you doing? Right? Get out of myself for like 5 minutes. So speaking of, we talked about mentors, right? That was one of the things I heard Kayla speak to, is like mentor came up. Do any of you have a mentor that you're actively using? No?
I do actually. I haven't spoken with her much lately, but Women in Tech Portland has a mentorship program that, you know, has, they have like a whole form that they set up so that they pair you with different people and different types of programs. So that's how I found my my mentor, and it's great because she does something completely different but is still in tech. So there's a lot of things about just like careers and knowing what's beyond the bubble of my current position has been really inspiring.
Awesome.
I do have someone that I speak to, not regularly, but she also works at URBN, but not at Newly. She works for the engineering team for, you know, URBN. And like we talk every once in a while. We haven't talked in a while, actually. I probably should reach out to her, but yeah, she was like really helpful during, since I was applying for, you know, an urban job. She was like helpful for me during that process, and we kind of like before and after, and have continued like that relationship.
I know one of the things I've asked when I've interviewed is like if they've had mentorship programs at the organization. That was always a big thing. I always try to find out what resources they have, because it's just as much as me interviewing them. I want to know if that's there, and I think there's something to say for organizations that have mentorship programs as part of their culture. So, Becca, do we have anything in our magic bingo bucket of questions?
Yes, so one of the questions that came in was about certifications. Did you pursue any certifications through HackerRank, LeetCode, or I don't know, there's a large amount of digital certifications you can get now. Did anyone get those, or did you feature them on your resume?
I've already kind of mentioned this. I did pursue a lot. I didn't actually finish any, so the intention was there.
I didn't while I was in a boot camp, but the Rubyist community had a team that was meeting up for studying to get the Ruby certification. And that was just a nice networking opportunity as well to have the study group, but I don't have any certifications.
Is there any other questions that are out there? Because it's almost time to like open it up. But I don't want to miss anyone.
Well, I'm just joining. How you guys doing?
Oh,
My name
Yeah,
is
so we
Star.
had a question that Caitlin kind of answered in the chat about asking for feedback. Did any of you ask for feedback, or like what did you put in your thank you emails to your interviewers?
Yeah, I would ask at the end of my interviews if they had any feedback for me or if they had any hesitations about my candidacy, because that was like an idea we got from our pathway director, because she said that like if you ask if they have any hesitancies about you, obviously that's kind of scary because they might give you negative feedback, but like getting that out in the open is way better because you might actually have like a good explanation for that, or can like talk about that more to reassure them rather than letting them just like leave with that and kind of like not call you back because of it. So sometimes like getting them to get that out in the open can give you the opportunity to explain, or, you know, if it doesn't work out, then you have that feedback and can use it for your next interview.
Yeah, that's great. You really do just want to know what the issue is.
Can you guys hear me?
Starlet, is that you?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I just wasn't sure because I started talking and then I heard somebody else talking. I wasn't sure if you heard me or not. But I'm just joining. Um, I'm just trying to figure out what you guys were talking about because I'm a person just trying to get a job and I'm not sure if you talked about where to get hired or anything like that since I'm just joining. So I just wanted to kind of know what you guys were talking about. This is the first time I've ever joined this meeting as well. So,
Where we went through several of our panelists here have gone through boot camps, coding boot camps and such, and we were just kind of talking about the experiences that they have gone through to land a job after boot camp, right? And what that journey has been like for them and some of the resources they used as part of that. Do you have any specific questions around that in general?
yeah, sure, you guys can go over whatever you talked about because I have completed a couple of boot camps
Mhm.
as well. Um, but I'm unemployed right now, so I'm just trying to work my way into the tech industry. Pretty much, I have my degree and everything. I'm just trying to continue to take classes until I'm able to land a job, somewhere. That's pretty much where I'm at, but I do have education behind me, but the experience has been really hard to gain only because most employers are looking for people with experience. Especially being a minority, it's really been hard because you find that a lot of people will hire somebody other than me just because of being a minority or because I may have more education than that person. Um, and I'm still not hired yet. Everywhere I apply, a lot of these places are saying that um, I have to have experience, and that's where the downfalls are. Just it's the experience getting in the door. That's the problem. Like, how do you get it if you're not going to get hired to get the experience? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And it's either a bachelor's degree, which I don't yet have, or you have to have a master's or experience. Those are the three barriers that I face all the time. Um, but yet they say they'll hire you, in the tech world, even if you don't have experience, but they don't hire you, so that's kind of where I'm stuck at, and how to get in the door.
I think one of the what do I call it, a tip? It wasn't really a tip, right? I think Kayla spoke to this around using please, Kayla, if you want to jump in here, but using someone else's, just asking around to see if someone has a particular small project, like developing a website and using that to build like a portfolio, someone you may know, right? Because sometimes we just need to build those portfolios up. 'Cause that's the only experience we will get to start. And I don't know if anyone else has any additional experience around that because it is tough if you don't have experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I would say too is GitHub has a tag that says contributions wanted for a lot of open source projects. And so if you could do some searching in terms of the programming languages that you're versed in, there's another resource, which I cannot remember for the life of me right now, but I'll try to find that link and so that it can come with the email with this recording maybe. For places to contribute, because if you can get in with an open source community, that's a great way to get that experience and then also make connections so that folks can refer you, when you are applying or if they have something open at their organization. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it is that level of doing work for free in order to show that you can do work for them. But I'm sorry you're having such a hard time. I hope that it gets better soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Can I jump in here?
Oh, look at whose hands raised. Yes, Meg.
Yeah, it's Meg. Let me just turn on my video. Hey, so yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I'm looking for your name. Starlet, is that your name? I'm so sorry. Yes, Starlet. And I hear it a lot from a lot of different people who enter the tech industry in non-conventional ways, as in just not like going to college and then graduating. And even you said you have degrees. And like it's just tough. Like the interviewing and the industry is very difficult right now. But also I think what you said about experience, that doesn't necessarily mean professional experience. Kayla did say about the open source contributions. I have so many links to that I will just start dropping in chat after this, where you can get started on finding projects. And I'm currently, I know Kayla from Flatirons Bootcamp, and I'm currently still doing that, but also working just because I've been networking with people, and I've met someone who I got a contract with through open source work. So it's like a really good way to have examples of your code that are kind of like alive online. And when you see jobs that are asking for a certain amount of years required experience, that shouldn't be like a deterrent. That's just kind of like every job description is really a wish list. That's all it boils down to. Just kind of get creative with fulfilling their requirements and be like, well, yeah, I have this, which could be commensurate with 2 years of experience, you know? Like instead make reasons to justify why this is equal to this and argue your case and show them, instead of focusing on just like those numbers, you know? Does that make sense? Hopefully.
It doesn't look like you're muted, Starlet, but the phenomenal
I'm
thing,
not muted.
yeah, I don't know if you're looking through, the phenomenal thing that's happened is community, right? Networking. You have a giant network. And thanks so much, Meg, for walking through that. Is the number of links that are coming through the chat right now.
I'm taking pictures of them.
I think we sent
Yeah.
some notes out there, and I think community is huge, right? Like this is about networking. And I can tell you, if I didn't have a network, I wouldn't have even landed the jobs that I have landed. Like I always know somebody that knows somebody, and eventually we get there. And it just takes that one moment. So hopefully you're able to take those pictures, but I think that we'll be sending out notes afterwards. So we'll have those links too. And we also have like coffee code and chat on every other Saturday. And there's typically someone there, and there's other women and allies on this call who have gone through that same experience and who are experiencing that currently in the workforce too. And back to our panelists have talked about this, is finding that person to, and not to say it in this way, but commiserate with, or at least go through the same experience. Like you're having the same experience, and you kind of can help each other move towards the intent and direction you need to go. So I'm just glad that you came. Like that's the best step, because that's what matters. It's like just setting, trudging the road. Like, yeah, sometimes it's hard, but we get there eventually.
Eventually. So are they still hiring 50-year-olds like me?
So I will tell you that it matters who it is, and the company that does hire the I only have the high definition screen on right now. So I'm a 45-year-old. I just have the great Zoom 40. It gives me the 30-year-old look, but it's okay.
Okay.
It's the concern I've always had too, right? And I always am looking for those organizations that don't look, and it's not legal to really look at age, but they hire me because of who I am and what I bring to their organization. That's where I want to work, right?
Yes, right.
And I think that, I'm just glad that you're here, actually. I can't look at all the stuff coming in. You're in the right place. That's all I
Yeah.
can, right? Um, so
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
no, that's awesome. And these stories of these four, the panelists that we have today, and your own story just make it that much more richer of a human experience right now of where we are and just women who code and how who we are and how we're trying to land a job, right? We're all trying to land a great place to work, and hopefully for the longest time that keeps us interested and enthused at the same time. I'm always looking for both of those. So is anyone else, is there any other questions out there? Does anyone want to raise their hand like Meg did and ask a question from our panelists?
So we had a question about internships. So people saw internships available for CS students. Has anyone applied for an internship coming from a boot camp or while in a boot camp?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
You can go, Kayla.
Okay, sorry. I can't like see the photos. I just like heard a voice. All I was going to say was I didn't apply for internships, but I was part of an interviewing team and internship program at my first job. Like we brought in interns from a boot camp. And something that was really interesting about that is that if you find a small company, especially, I think there might be more flexibility there. We would sometimes get emails from folks who were interested in an internship and could provide them with that information or maybe opportunity if it was something specifically tailored. So being on the interviewing side of an internship, having those soft skills was like a huge difference, because the decision from the company perspective was, do we want to take someone on that's going to enrich us? Like, can we learn in terms of our experience teaching them, and will it be an enjoyable exchange?
I was just gonna say, because Tech Elevator, it was like a full-time boot camp, I definitely could not have taken on also an internship. But like the plan for me, because I like to plan ahead for things, was if I hadn't landed a job when I did, my next thing was going to be, if I couldn't land like a full-time position, my next thing was going to be start looking for internships just to like get myself out there and really just like start on the path that I wanted to be down. So.
Looks like we have a hand up from Kira. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, I had a quick question just about when applying for jobs. I feel like it's pretty obvious that it's a pretty male-dominated field with software engineering in general and coding. And also with, I would say, predominantly white industry as well. And I wanted to ask if people, when they were applying for jobs or in interviews, had asked any sort of guiding questions about workplace dynamics in terms of kind of attitudes towards women and people of color. Because I know it's difficult. A lot of these websites have their ethics or moral code towards diversity listed on their websites, but oftentimes the actual workplace culture can be kind of different. So I wanted to ask if people had asked any sort of questions about that helped them get some enlightenment about the workplace culture when they were applying.
Yeah, I asked that a lot about, and like that would tie into like asking about their culture too, or like things that they were proud of about the company. And oftentimes if that was a part of it, they'll say that, because diversity is such like a huge thing, especially in tech right now. And usually if that's something the company's doing, they'll say that's something they're proud of, or something they like about the culture. And also like if I'm meeting a lot of people like several people that are interviewing me and they all are a white male, that's kind of a red flag to me. Like, I liked when I was interviewing with women or interviewing with, you know, someone that wasn't white, because that like showed me a lot more too. So down like the hiring, you know, process, you get to meet a lot of people like that are in the management position. So you kind of get a sense of that a little bit too. But yeah, I think it's definitely appropriate to ask that.
Definitely. I would always ask about diversity, and I would even ask like if they're involved in any local like communities or local clubs that also try to get diversity into tech, or if it was something that they would be interested in potentially pursuing, because like especially for me, like getting other women into tech is something I'm really passionate about. So like I would tell them that during the interview, and then, you know, see their response, and like also see what kind of like diversity standards they have. So yeah, definitely ask about it because it's important.
And Becca also put out there too that to check their website, like check out their leadership team. That's always a good place to see how, like, what their leadership team looks like, and make sure there's diversity within the leadership team.
And I would add asking about retention too. Retention of women, retention of people of color. And if they can't answer that, have them, you know, send you that information later. Because sometimes there's this sense of hiring a lot of folks, but not keeping them on.
Great point.
Such good advice. Thank you, guys.
We got time. If you got questions, we got 4 panelists here that we're going to chew up their experiences.
There was a question earlier about contract work. So whether to try and get into contract work if you're having a hard time finding a full-time position. Has anyone had any experience among the panelists trying to do that route?
Yeah, my position is currently a contract position. And I realized that I needed a change from my previous company. So that was where I went. The interviewing process is so different. It's so fast. The priorities are different. The negotiations are different. I think that if you are interested in dabbling in a lot of different areas, maybe a few different companies, contracts are a nice way to go. You can get a sense of where things are going. I would just, you know, be aware of what it is that you want to get out of it, because also as a contract employee, there's usually some boundaries between your work and the work for the other employees on the team. So I'd really inquire about that to make sure that you're going to get a full-fledged experience. But I mean, some of my colleagues have been contractors for 10 years at my current company or other companies. And it's just like a different strategy of getting paid. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that benefits are probably going to be different. So if that is a big goal for you in part of this transition, that your expectations might not be met in a contract position.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just like good, that ability to actually get some of that experience too that you need as well. So that's such a great point, Kayla.
Playing off of that question, did any of you negotiate, or how did you go about negotiating your salary when you first interviewed?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't personally negotiate my salary because it was more than I expected to get anyway. So I was pretty cool with it. But I did get some great advice from my pathway director where, you know, a lot of it's not really great. Beforehand, I used to think it was a good idea to come in with a wide range. And I don't know why I ever thought that, but it's really not a good idea. Companies like to hear a hard number from you. And if you're uncomfortable giving a hard number, you can maybe think of a number that you'd be really satisfied with and say, so for example, mine at the time was 75, right? So my strategy would then be to go in and say, I would like 75, but I'm flexible for the right opportunity. That way you open yourself up really cordially to negotiation. Nobody feels pressured, but you also get to say, you know, I'm willing to move around for you, but you have to give back also. So you can open up then maybe like they would come back with 65, but they have like the most incredible benefits package you've ever seen in your life. So that is just kind of like my mousy way to start a negotiation, because I'm not brave enough to be like, no, I'm going to give you this number. You come back to me with an offer.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And definitely like evaluating the benefits package is huge, because especially if healthcare like is US, it's tied to your employer for the most part. So keeping in mind how much you might have to pay actually makes a big difference among different employers.
Apprenticeships.
Was anyone looking at remote positions too, or mostly looking at Philadelphia? Or Kayla, I know you're not in Philadelphia anymore, but when you were you looking mostly around where you were, just anywhere?
I'm actually pretty sure I looked on Women Who Code, the website, and they have jobs up there. So I was actually looking on there for mostly remote, because there weren't any in Philadelphia. So I was looking at remote jobs there, because I mean, you can do this job remotely if you know the right system at the company is in place. So I was open to doing that too.
Do you know any remote jobs that are available? Do you know of any?
I currently don't know any right now, but like I said, I looked on like the Woman Who Code website, and they have a whole list on there. So I would definitely recommend going on there and checking it out.
No, I was asking Becca, the one that brought it up. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I would also recommend the Women Who Code job board. They're a great resource. Also, if anyone knows, like out in tech, like a lot of these different organizations, or if you're in Slack, I'm probably in like 20 Slack
Okay.
workspaces now, and almost all of them have job channels. So for example, if you're a Python person, like you can join the PyLadies Slack, and there's a job channel on there, and a lot of jobs get posted on there.
Yeah, and it looks like Kyra posted a really nice remote women, and I'll repost it again. There's so many resources on that everyone's posted that we're gonna have to go through this and scrub this well, Becca.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be sending out the recording and list of all the links that I can find, remember to write down afterwards. So don't worry about that.
So
Thank you.
yep, and we're like, I'm just going to throw this out here in the way I want to, instead of try to word it in a question. I know for myself, when I've gone through, and I don't know if anyone else is, if I was going to be open to moving, I remember putting it in my resume, open for relocation if the right opportunity presents itself. So that's always a good way to place it too, because it'd have to be a really good opportunity for me to, I'd rather be remote or not, right? So I don't know if that's a tip, or if someone else, you know, has ever used that with the panelists. And Miranda, the first few jobs that I got, I was always blown away with how much money, after working in a grocery store at 15 years, or when I was 15, like $7 an hour, or maybe it was $5.25 at that time. I don't know. But I'm always surprised in technology how I think that well we are paid, but I always have to be aware of what our current pay structure could be, or what that is, because I don't know enough, right? And I think that educating myself on what that pay structure or where I should be is important, because I don't ever want to dismiss where I should be on a quality standpoint, right? And so I get where you were saying mousy. I'm kind of like that too. So I haven't had to negotiate yet. It's been good, but still.
Right, yeah. And I think I might have even been I had people who always like to stick their noses and stuff, the people, and afterwards say like, oh, you should have countered back with higher, or like, that's too, you could be making 100,000 or whatever. And I was like, well, hang on. First of all, I know my worth. I'm pretty brand new to this. And even if I wasn't being super modest about it, at JPMC, everyone, at least in the organization that I'm in, starts the same. So you don't really get to negotiate at that point. But like later, when I'm talking about raises with somebody, I will negotiate because I'll know better my worth to the team. So that's something to think about too.
That's for our next panel session where we have you all back to talk about how you negotiated for your salary increases.
Yeah. Miranda, I think you brought up a great point, was that I asked as well, I was kind of curious just about what it was like, but because there was a starting salary that was the same for all junior developers at the company, that made me feel more at ease about the offer that they were giving me. But using things like Glassdoor and PayScale, and if you sign up for, I think, PayScale, they'll send you reminders every so often to like update your report. And that really helped me negotiate actually my first salary raise, which was, hey, looking at the job that I'm doing, where I'm at, like all of these things, I should actually be making this much. And that having those numbers and that data ready for my employer was hugely beneficial to like actually making that switch.
Awesome.
Thanks. I'm going to write that down actually.
FinTech. Oh, AI. Oh.
We also had a question earlier about data science, and I don't think any of our panelists are specifically data science, but if anyone else has anything to add about fintech, data science, or AI specifically.
Just come over to Microsoft. That's all we do. We build AI now, and we work in finance and technology.
So Angel.io, like there are so many fintech startups and AI startups now. So that might be a good avenue for getting started. A lot of them are looking for help.
It looks like Joanne has raised her hand.
Yes, I was just wondering, with Microsoft though, do you have to have a college degree?
I'm going to say that you would probably, I can't really speak to that because I think each hiring department's a little bit different. I think that with some of the jobs listed, they do say bachelor's degree on there. But I feel that, and this is me speaking from my experiences, it's a huge organization, and each siloed department or hiring unit, hiring manager does things differently. So if you can think about it in that sense, so whereas I may be here and working in this part of the organization and be hired underneath here, they have a whole different hiring policy over here, right? On this other side. And there's so many different branches that I don't even know everyone in. I find different units or different operating units within Microsoft all the time when I'm doing things. So I would never discourage anyone from not applying for a job, but I would encourage you that if you do, reach out to me and we can talk about what that experience is like, and I may be giving you some tips on how to get hired there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I say that this is my philosophy on things, everyone, is that I didn't have a college degree until I was 35, I think, and I'm just throwing that number out there. Maybe I was 37, who knows? And I had all these jobs beforehand, and it was through experience and hard work and who I am that I was put into these positions. So I always say, don't let a job description limit you from applying and writing that cover letter and telling who your story, because someone's looking for you. So, and maybe that's overly positive and I just have the silver lining in life, but don't let that ever discourage you from at least going out there. And I have resources if you need to be certified in some things. I may be able to help. This is how community helps, right? I can say, hey, I know of some free training you can go get over here. I do that all the time to people that have lost work. So that's what community is about. And if
Is
anyone,
that the one in St. Louis?
I'm actually in Malvern in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. So this is all around the world, this class then.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you know of any free boot camps, like full stack developer boot camps to take online?
I don't know of any right now, but really, if you think about that particular organization, Microsoft, they're going to be particular to the Azure and their product stacks that they're trying to push out, right? Just like if you run Amazon or I know Urban Outfitters wants you to
Mhm.
wants you to buy Newly clothes, I guess. And that's what I'm looking up next, by the way. I'm going to start looking up Newly because with that, Hannah,
Please do. I will talk your ear off about Newly. So
right? Like I didn't know about Newly before, right? So what I'm trying to say is like for us women and us allies and just us as humans rocking around this earth on this COVID time, don't let something discourage you from trying because you don't know when the magic will happen.
I
And that,
heard this, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I heard this statistic that kind of like stuck with me. It's that men will, if they're 60%, if they believe that they're 60% qualified for a position, they'll apply to it. But women have to feel like they're 100% qualified for a position to apply to it. And that's not true. So when you're applying to positions, don't look for 100%, look for 60%. Heck, look for 50%. Like you don't have to fit the exact mold, because in reality, like the people that are also making these like job requirements aren't even the managers. They're the hiring managers, which are probably like part of the HR department. So they don't even really, I mean, they have a guideline of what the manager wants, but they don't even really know.
thanks
Okay.
for sharing that, Hannah. I just want to like grab you and like hug you. Like be gentle with yourself, everybody. 60% is good enough, right?
I have a question. Meg again. So was it Hannah that works at Newly?
Yeah.
Um, I'm interested to hear what, well, I believe Caitlin, you said you haven't started your role yet, but what each of you like about, well, I guess something you like about, working in the industry and something that you felt like, I guess you were glaringly underprepared for going into it from boot camp.
Honestly, I don't feel like I was underprepared for anything, because like the part of the nice thing about a boot camp is that it teaches you how to learn, like that's like the big thing for boot camps. It's like, yeah, these boot camps like don't cover everything, but it teaches you how to learn to code. So for me, I found that I was able to, because none of the I really don't work with any of the technologies that I learned in the boot camp. Like I'm using, I actually think all new tech. Yeah, I'm literally learning all new stuff. So, but like because I had learned how to learn in the boot camp, I feel like I'm able to pick it up quickly, because you've learned how to learn. I've said that like 3 times, but yeah. So I really don't feel like and to this, the only thing that like is inhibiting me in any way is my imposter syndrome. But that's just my own, self. Like that's a different issue, like imposter syndrome is real and it happens to me a lot. So, in those cases, like I know it's not the fact that I don't know what it is, because if I don't know it, I can learn it. So whenever I start to feel like that imposter syndrome, like, oh, like, why did they hire me? Like I'm working with all these people that have CS degrees. Like I kind of like take a step back and say, well, you know what, Hannah, you don't know it right now, but let's read an article about it, or let's watch a YouTube video about it, and you'll know it tomorrow. So that's kind of how I feel about that.
I will
that-
say, sorry, Hannah. I will say I was vastly underprepared for, this is my first time working for a big organization. I was vastly underprepared for the amount of like JPMC specific talk that we were going to be doing. I mean, a lot of meetings that I sit in to this day, I've been working there since January. I still can't understand what people are saying. We have these things called Go links where I can just kind of type into the search bar of my search engine and like go/whatever. And there's this really super helpful one called go/acronym where somebody will be like talking completely in code, no pun intended, and I'm sitting there on my other screen like go acronym, VB, you know, whatever they're saying, and I'm like, what the heck does this mean? And to go along with that, there's a lot of JPMC specific technology that doesn't actually have a lot to do with coding that I just did not know I was going to be dealing with. To Hannah's point, I was taught to learn a lot in a very short amount of time, which I think is helpful. But I was, you know, you're under this impression that you're going to go into a coding job and do coding. But a lot of what I do is actually not related to coding at all. So that's something that I think was a little shocking to me. Not that I don't enjoy it. I think it's still really cool to learn and be able to work with all those technologies. It's just a little bit different of a skill set than I was expecting to deal with. So that might be a good thing to ask in your interviews if you're at all curious about like how much coding you'll actually be doing at the company. And I think it's probably varies team to team, but at least for me, I'd honestly say that coding is about 25% of what I do now.
They say that the first year when you come into a large organization is the shift is more emotional than it is technical or anything else. So
I would agree with that.
the first year is always like the emotional roller coaster. So if you can make it an emotional roller coaster, like what have I done? Oh, today's a good day. What have I done? You're gonna survive. Just make it that first year.
That was the most accurate representation of my week.
Yep.
And
you did it.
And like, what does that acronym mean? I get it. Like, it's happened to me every organization I've been in. I'm like, what are they bleep bleep talking about? Like, I feel like I sit there and nod for meetings for a long time, no matter how old I get in these and how many different jobs. So I'm there. It doesn't change. And I love that you brought that up. Thank you. So we're about out of time. We have about 5 minutes left. So is there any like pressing questions that you want to get off your chest? And please don't forget that everyone's shared LinkedIn connects. And there was, I think this deck's going to go out too, when we have our awesome panelists LinkedIn sites as well, or LinkedIn pages there too, so that you'll be able to connect there. Is there anyone else that has anything that they would like to ask? Any feedback, any comments before we wrap up?
We had a question in the chat about, did anyone consider doing self-teaching instead of going to the boot camp, and what swayed you towards boot camp?
I know I've said this many of times during this panel. I could not self-teach myself, and that's why I had to join a boot camp.
Yeah, same. Same. I have ADHD, so it's really hard for me to like focus myself. Like I require structure. So I think it's like knowing yourself and like if you can actually commit to that, or if you thrive better in structure. Because I feel like some people might even do better with self-taught, like going at their own pace. But I couldn't do it and it was going to take too long. So that's why I decided boot camp.
100% agree with that. If there is no pressure on me and there are not high stakes, I will not do it. I just won't. I'll be like, what could I be doing instead of this? Like, it would be cool to learn that, but what would make me like super happy to not think about doing? So I could not handle self-paced learning. I would just not do it.
And from the like self-paced boot camp perspective, I thought about trying to learn it on my own. I was going for free resources, but I know that I have questions that I hit and like things that I don't know. And this like stepping into a new field was just so scary for me that I wanted the reassurance from some kind of structure that like, if you learn these things, you will likely get a job. And so that just calmed me down a lot, because I think it's hard when you teach yourself to find the people who you're going to ask your questions to. And that was what my bootcamp helped provide.
Yeah, and I will
Yeah,
say that some of the stuff I learned by myself, like before the boot camp, and then like we were going over it again during the cohort, I was like, oh, I actually did not understand that at all. And I thought I did until like I got it explained to me in like several different ways, got to like interact with it in a different way and ask actual questions about it. So sometimes self-teaching is hard if you're actually like by yourself because you don't know what you don't know.
Then you always move to doing TikTok videos of how hard it is, and you're like TikToking when you should be studying, right? Nobody's done that before? Okay.
Wait, how did I feel like you're just like reading into my soul. Like I made a TikTok one time about how I didn't want to code. So
What? And I probably watched it. So I get it, right? It's all good. We're not that different. All right. So I think we'll wrap up, but I just want give a huge, like, my soul bucket, my soul hole is filled up from this call tonight. So I want to say thank you, Miranda, Kayla, thank you, Hannah, thank you, Caitlin. Thank you everyone who showed up tonight to participate. We are so glad that you came. Yeah.